God, who let you in?
Diana Voss pointed at Evelyn Monroe in the middle of Harlow and Stone, Las Vegas's most exclusive jewelry boutique, and laughed. Not a quiet laugh. Not a polite laugh. The kind of laugh designed to carry across a room and land on every ear in it. Security. Diana's voice was a blade. I don't know how she got in here, but she clearly doesn't belong. Evelyn didn't move. Didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed locked on Diana's face with a stillness that should have been a warning. It wasn't. What Diana Voss didn't know, what nobody in that glittering, chandelier-lit room knew, was that the man Evelyn had just texted was already in his car. Already moving. And he owned every square foot of the building they were all standing in. But we'll get to that. If you've ever walked into a room and felt invisible on purpose, felt someone look straight through you like you weren't worth the effort of being seen, drop by in the comments right now. Because Evelyn Monroe knew that feeling. She'd known it her whole life. And today, it was about to cost the wrong woman everything. Welcome to Afro Seoul Mafia Diaries. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing who's in our family. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Evelyn had walked into Harlow and Stone at 2:14 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, not because she was trying to make a statement, but because Tuesday was her day off and her mother's birthday was in 4 days, and she had been saving for 3 months for something worthy of the woman who raised her alone on a teacher's salary and never once complained about it. She was wearing a simple cream-wrapped dress. Natural hair pinned back, a few loose coils framing her face. The only jewelry on her body was the thin gold bracelet her mother had clasped around her wrist when Evelyn turned 16, worn down now to a soft, quiet shine. She looked elegant without trying. She always did. The sales associate nearest the entrance, sharp-faced, name tag reading Claire, looked up, ran her eyes from Evelyn's face to her shoes in under 2 seconds, and looked back down without a word. No greeting. No smile. Not even the performance of one. Evelyn noticed. She always noticed. But she had navigated rooms like this before, and she knew how to move through dismissal without letting it move her. She walked deeper into the store, eyes traveling across the displays, diamonds, sapphires, emerald cuts, tennis bracelets laid out on black velvet under cold white light. She stopped at the center case. Rose gold bracelet, 3rd row. Small diamonds threaded through the band, catching light in a way that made something tighten in her chest. Her mother would cry. That was the image she held onto. Her mother's hands flying to her mouth. Excuse me. Evelyn looked toward the nearest associate. Could I see the bracelet in the 3rd row? The rose gold one. The associate, older, hair pulled back tight, glanced at the case, then at Evelyn, then past her like the question had evaporated in the air between them. Someone will be with you shortly. No one came. For minutes passed. Evelyn counted. She watched 2 other customers get immediate attention, watched associates practically race across the floor to reach them, while she stood at the center case like a ghost. Her hand tightened slightly around the small leather purse at her side. She breathed. She waited. Then the door opened. And Diana Voss walked in. Diana was the kind of woman who entered rooms like she was arriving at her own party. Mid-40s, highlighted blonde hair, wearing something that probably cost more than Evelyn's monthly rent. She came in with 2 other women, equally polished, equally loud, and the entire energy of the store shifted toward her like a flower toward sunlight. Claire materialized from nowhere. 2 other associates appeared. Champagne was mentioned. Diana's eyes swept the room the way powerful women's eyes do, assessing, cataloging, dismissing. They landed on Evelyn. Something shifted in Diana's expression. A slow curl at the corner of her mouth. She leaned toward the woman beside her and said something low, and both of them laughed. Evelyn turned back to the case. She was not going to let 2 women she'd never met ruin what this moment was supposed to be about. She focused on the bracelet. Tried to picture her mother's face again. Are you waiting for someone? Diana's voice came from behind her, carrying that particular lilt of a woman who asks questions she already knows the answers to. Evelyn turned slowly. I'm shopping. Diana's eyebrows rose. Shopping. She repeated the word like it was a punchline she was giving the room time to appreciate. Her friends smiled on cue. In here? Yes. Evelyn held her gaze. In here. Diana made a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a scoff, and turned to Claire. How long has she been standing there unattended? Claire shifted uncomfortably. I was just about to. She's been standing at that case for almost 5 minutes. Diana's voice sharpened like she was doing the store a favor. That's not how we run things here, is it, Claire? She said we like she owned the place. She looked at Evelyn again. What exactly are you looking for, sweetheart? Maybe I can help you find something more in your range. The gift shop downstairs does lovely things. The room went quiet. Not library quiet. The specific quiet of people pretending not to listen while listening to every single word. Evelyn felt the heat climb her neck. Felt every eye in the room find her at once. Felt the particular weight of being made into a spectacle in a place she had every right to be standing in. She did not look away from Diana. I didn't ask for your help. Diana blinked. Whatever she'd expected, embarrassment, retreat, an apology, it wasn't that. Her expression hardened into something uglier. She turned to the store manager, a tall man in a gray suit who had appeared from the back at the first scent of conflict. I'd like to know, Diana said, her voice carrying clearly across the entire floor, why this woman is standing in the middle of your store with no assistance, no appointment, and apparently no intention of purchasing anything, making the rest of your clients uncomfortable. The manager looked at Evelyn, then at Diana, then back at Evelyn. And in that look, Evelyn saw the decision he made before he even opened his mouth. Ma'am, he said, directing it at her, perhaps I can help you find what you're looking for at one of our partner stores on the... I'm not leaving. Evelyn's voice was quiet. Absolute. That was when Diana laughed. The loud one. The one designed to carry security. Diana's hand lifted slightly, a small, elegant gesture like she was flagging a waiter. I don't know how she got in here, but she clearly doesn't belong. Evelyn stood completely still. And then, without breaking eye contact with Diana, she reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and typed a single message. 3 words. Please come in. She pressed send. Slid the phone back into her purse. And waited. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't give Diana Voss the satisfaction of a single trembling lip. She just stood there in the middle of Harlow and Stone, back straight, chin level, gold bracelet catching the light on her wrist, and waited for the room to find out exactly who it had just disrespected. If you felt that in your chest, if you know what it feels like to be underestimated in a room you earned your place in, hit that like button right now. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Evelyn's position? Would you have walked out, or would you have stayed? The door to Harlow and Stone opened without drama. No announcement. No entourage spilling through first. No sound except the soft mechanical exhale of the hinges and the quiet click of expensive shoes on marble floor. Kim Seo-jin walked in alone. He was dressed the way men dressed when they had nothing left to prove, dark charcoal suit, no tie. The top button of his shirt open like formality was something he tolerated on other people's schedules, but not his own. He was tall. Broad across the shoulders in a way the suit tried to contain and failed. His face was the kind of handsome that didn't ask for your attention, but held it anyway, sharp jaw, dark eyes that moved across the room once, slowly, like a man doing a quiet calculation that no one else in the room was qualified to understand. He did not smile. He never smiled in rooms like this. His eyes found Evelyn first. They always did. She was still standing exactly where she'd been, back straight, chin up, the storm around her not touching her surface, even though he could see, from the way her fingers had tightened around the strap of her purse, that it was touching something underneath. That small tell. He knew every one of them. His jaw shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. He started moving toward her. Diana Voss saw him before he reached the center of the room, and something electric moved across her face, recognition, pleasure, the particular brightness of a woman who believed she was about to be rescued by proximity to power. She stepped forward, intercepting his path with a smile that had clearly worked on men before. Seo-jin. His name in her mouth like they were old friends. Maybe they were. Vegas was a small city when you lived at a certain altitude. I didn't know you were coming in today. It's been months. He walked past her. Not around her. Past her. Close enough that she had to take a small step back. He didn't look at her. Didn't break stride. Didn't acknowledge that she had spoken at all. The smile dropped off Diana's face like it had been cut loose. He crossed the floor and stopped in front of Evelyn. Stood there for a moment just looking at her the way he always did when he arrived somewhere she already was, like he was checking something internal. Like her being whole and standing was a thing he needed to confirm with his own eyes before anything else could happen. You okay? His voice was low. Just for her. Evelyn looked up at him. Something moved through her eyes, not weakness, not relief exactly, more like the particular exhale of a person who has been holding themselves together through sheer will and can finally, for 1 second, Put the weight down. I'm fine, she said. He looked at her for one more beat. Then he turned. The manager was already moving toward him, different energy entirely now, the stiffness of a man who had just realized the size of the mistake he was standing inside. Mr. Kim. His voice had changed completely. Warm where it had been cold. Urgent where it had been dismissive. We weren't expecting you today. Is there something I can? Who asked her to leave? Seojin's voice was conversational. Calm. The kind of calm that made the question more dangerous, not less. The manager opened his mouth. Closed it. I'm asking you a direct question. Still calm. Still quiet. Who asked her to leave? Silence spread across the store like water across a flat surface, fast, total, reaching every corner. Diana recovered first. She always recovered first. She moved towards Seojin with her chin lifted and her voice resettled into something reasonable and smooth. Seojin, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was simply concerned that the staff weren't. I know what you did. He didn't look at her when he said it. He was looking at the manager. I want every person in the store who had a hand in asking this woman to leave to be standing in front of me in the next 60 seconds. Nobody moved for 3 full seconds. Then Claire moved. Then the manager. Then the associate who had looked through Evelyn like she was air. They assembled in front of him like people called to answer for something they couldn't talk their way out of. Seojin reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Made one call. Said 4 words into it before he hung up. By the whole store. Did your jaw just drop? Because mine did. That's what it looks like when a man shows up not with words, but with weight. Drop a heart in the comments if Seojin just became your favorite character. And tell me, did Diana really think walking past her was an accident? Some people never see it coming. Like this video if you're staying until the end. The 4 words landed in the room like a grenade with the pin already pulled. By the whole store. For a moment nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The associates stood in their assembled line like they'd been bolted to the floor. The manager's face had gone the particular shade of pale that only comes when a person realizes the ground they were standing on was never as solid as they thought. Even Diana, composed, calculated Diana, who had navigated Las Vegas's elite circles for 15 years without once losing her footing, even she went completely still. Then the door opened behind Seojin and a man in a slim black suit walked in carrying a leather portfolio, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone who had received that exact phone call before and knew precisely what it meant. Seojin's assistant. Minjun. He crossed the floor without making eye contact with anyone, stopped beside Seojin, opened the portfolio and held it out. Seojin didn't look at it. He looked at the manager. Every case. Every display. Every item currently on this floor. His voice hadn't risen a single degree. All of it. Process it now. The manager's mouth opened. Mr. Kim, the total value of our current inventory is... I know what it is. Seojin's eyes moved to him slowly. I own the building. I've seen the insurance documents. Process it. The manager closed his mouth. Turned to Claire. Claire turned to the other associate. For 3 seconds, they just looked at each other with the particular desperation of people waiting for someone else to find a way out of a situation that had no exits. Then the manager straightened his jacket, walked behind the main counter, and began typing. The sound of the transaction processing, quiet keystrokes, the soft confirmation tones of a system accepting numbers most people would never see in a lifetime, filled the store like a kind of music. Diana watched it happen with her champagne glass still in her hand, her knuckles slowly whitening around the stem. Her 2 friends had gone completely quiet behind her. The performance they'd walked in expecting to enjoy had inverted itself so completely and so fast that none of them had found the language for it yet. Seojin turned back to Evelyn. He stepped toward her, closing the distance until they were standing the way they stood when they were alone, close, unhurried, the rest of the room becoming background noise. He looked down at her and something in his expression shifted into something that wasn't quite softness, but lived right next to it. Show me what you came in for. Evelyn held his gaze for a moment. Then she turned and walked back to the center display case, the one she had been standing at when all of this started. She stopped in front of it and looked down at the rose gold bracelet in the 3rd row. The one with the small diamonds threaded through the band. The one she had been trying to get someone to show her for 20 minutes before the world inside this store decided she wasn't worth showing it to. That one, she said quietly. Seojin looked at it. Then he looked at Claire, who materialized beside the case so fast she nearly knocked into the display. Open it. Claire's hands were visibly unsteady as she retrieved the key. The case opened. She lifted the bracelet out on its velvet pad and held it forward. Seojin took it, turned to Evelyn. And without ceremony, without performance, without doing any of it for the room, he unclasped it and reached for her wrist. Evelyn held still while he fastened it, felt the cool weight of it settle against her skin just above her mother's old bracelet. She looked down at them side by side, the old gold worn thin with 15 years of love, and this new one catching the store light in every direction at once. Her throat tightened. She would not cry in the store. The rest, Seojin said, straightening and addressing Minjun, goes to the women's shelter on Harmon. All of it. Have it delivered by end of day. Minjun nodded and began making another call. The sound that came from Diana's direction wasn't quite a word. It was the sound a person makes when they've been watching a situation and suddenly understand that not a single moment of it was ever about them. She set her champagne glass down on the nearest surface, too hard, so it rang against the display case, and pulled herself upright. Seojin. Her voice was different now, stripped of its earlier warmth, reaching for dignity instead. I think we should talk. Privately. What happened here today was simply a... Diana. He said her name once. Flat. Final. She stopped. Don't. He held her gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Whatever you're about to call it, don't. He turned back to Evelyn. Extended his arm. She looked at it for a moment, then slid her hand into the crook of his elbow, and they turned together toward the door. Behind them the store sat in complete silence. Every case emptied. Every associate motionless. Diana Voss standing in the middle of it all with a champagne glass she hadn't touched and a humiliation she would be replaying for a very long time. The door closed behind Evelyn and Seojin with the same quiet click it had opened with. No drama. No final words. No backward glance. They didn't need one. That walkout. That silence. That 2-second look that said everything without saying anything. Seojin didn't need to shout because real power never does. Hit that like button if this story is giving you everything you came for. And drop in the comments, what do you think Diana is feeling right now standing in that empty store? Because I have a feeling she's never felt anything like it. The news moved through Las Vegas's elite circles the way fire moves through dry grass. Fast. Total. Unstoppable. By 4 p.m., less than 2 hours after Evelyn and Seojin walked out of Harlow and Stone, 3 separate group chats had exploded with the story. By 5 p.m., it had reached the wives of 2 city councilmen, a retired casino mogul, and the woman who ran the most exclusive interior design firm on the Strip. By 6 p.m., Diana Voss had stopped answering her phone entirely. The version of the story spreading wasn't even exaggerated. It didn't need to be. The truth was already devastating enough that Diana had publicly humiliated a woman in a jewelry store, called security on her, laughed at her in front of a room full of witnesses, and then watched that same woman leave on the arm of Kim Seojin while he purchased every item in the building and donated it to charity. The charity detail was the part that kept circling back. That was the part people couldn't get past. Not just that he'd bought everything, but that he'd given it away. That there had been no display of possession, no trophy moment, no look what I can do. Just a quiet instruction and a women's shelter receiving more inventory than it could store. People who had spent years cultivating relationships with Seojin's orbit were calling each other trying to understand how Diana had missed something that significant. How she had looked at Evelyn Monroe and seen someone beneath her. How she had been so certain. Inside Harlow and Stone the aftermath was equally brutal. The manager sat in his office with the door closed for 40 minutes after they left. When he came out, his face had the hollowed quality of a man who had run the numbers on a decision he couldn't take back. Claire had already called in sick for her next 3 shifts. The associate who had looked through Evelyn without blinking had submitted a transfer request to the downtown location before the store closed. None of it changed what had happened. None of it could. Diana finally answered her phone at 6:47 p.m. It was her lawyer. Then her publicist. Then the friend who had been standing beside her in the store. The one who had laughed on cue, calling now with the particular energy of someone attempting to quietly relocate themselves to the other side of history. I had no idea who she was, the friend said. Her voice was careful. Measured. The voice of a woman building distance. I mean, none of us did, Diana. But the way you spoke to her, I did think at the time that it was. Don't. Diana's voice came out sharper than she intended. She pulled it back. Don't rewrite what you were doing when you were standing right beside me. Silence on the line. I'm just saying, the friend continued, softer now, more careful, that maybe reaching out would help. To her. Or even to Seojin. A private apology before this gets any more. I am not apologizing to her. The words came out before Diana could stop them. Hard. Absolute. Another silence. Longer this time. Okay, the friend said finally. And in that single word was the sound of a door closing. The call ended. Diana set her phone face down on her kitchen counter and stood very still in her enormous, perfectly decorated kitchen and looked at nothing. She was not a woman who cried easily. She was not a woman who admitted mistakes easily. She had built her entire position in this city on the understanding that she read rooms correctly, that she knew who mattered and who didn't, and that her instincts had never once cost her anything serious. Until today. The thing that kept returning to her, the thought she couldn't push away no matter how many calls she took or how much she moved around her house, was the image of Evelyn Monroe's face when Seoul had walked past her. Not triumphant. Not vindicated. Not even satisfied. Just still. The same stillness she'd had when Diana had laughed at her. The same quiet. Like the outcome had never been in question for her. Like she had simply been waiting for the room to catch up to something she already knew. That stillness was the thing Diana couldn't shake. Because it meant Evelyn hadn't needed saving. She had simply made one call. 3 words. And then stood in the wreckage of Diana's certainty with her chin level and her mother's bracelet on her wrist and waited. At 8 p.m. Seojin's assistant Minjun sent a single email to the management company that owned Harlow and Stone's lease, a company that, 3 layers of holding structure down, reported to Kim Seojin. The email contained no threats. No demands. No language that could be characterized as pressure of any kind. It simply noted that Mr. Kim would be conducting a full review of tenant agreements in the building effective the following Monday. The CEO of the management company read it twice, then forwarded it to the store's regional director with 2 words in the subject line. Handle this. By 9 p.m. the regional director had personally called the store manager. By 9:30, the manager had drafted a formal letter of apology addressed to Ms. Evelyn Monroe. By 10 p.m. Claire had been informed that her position at Harlow and Stone was under review pending an internal investigation into customer treatment protocols. None of them said Seojin's name out loud. They didn't have to. That was the thing about real power. It didn't announce itself. It didn't make speeches or issue warnings or arrive with noise. It sent one quiet email. And then it waited. Just like Evelyn had. Power doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like one email at 8 p.m. that changes everything by morning. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one standing quietly with everything to lose and nothing to prove. Comment below, do you think Diana will ever really understand what she did wrong? Or is she the kind of woman who never learns? I want to know what you think. The city looked different from up here. Las Vegas at night from the 47th floor of Seojin's private residence was not the Las Vegas that tourists photographed from the strip. It wasn't neon and noise and desperation dressed up as glamour. From up here it was something quieter and more honest, a vast dark grid punctuated by light, stretching out in every direction like a map of every decision that had ever been made in the city and every consequence that had followed. Evelyn stood at the floor-to-ceiling window with a glass of water she hadn't drunk and looked at it. She had been quiet since they left the store. Not the wounded kind of quiet, not the silence of someone processing pain. More like the silence of someone letting something settle. Like sediment after water has been disturbed, slowly finding the bottom again. Seojin came up behind her. Didn't touch her. Just stood close enough that she could feel the warmth of him at her back, both of them looking out at the city together. You didn't have to do all of that, she said. I know. The whole store, Seojin. There was something in her voice that wasn't quite reproach and wasn't quite gratitude. Something in between. That was a lot. It wasn't enough. She turned at that. Turned and looked at him properly for the first time since they'd left, really looked, the way she did when she was trying to read past the surface of him, past the controlled expression and the careful stillness he wore in public like a second suit. What do you mean it wasn't enough? He held her gaze. You were standing in that store for 20 minutes before she even walked in. 20 minutes of being looked through. Talked past. Made to feel like you didn't belong in a room you had every right to be in. His jaw tightened. I bought the store. I should have bought the whole block. Despite everything, despite the exhaustion sitting behind her eyes and the tightness still living in her chest from hours of holding herself together, Evelyn laughed. A real one. Short and sudden and completely unguarded, the kind of laugh that surprised even her. Seojin watched it happen with an expression that was the closest thing to warmth his face knew how to make. Don't buy the block, she said. The building next door is available. Seojin. I'm serious. I know you are. She shook her head, still smiling, and turned back to the window. That's what concerns me. They stood in silence for a moment. Comfortable silence. The kind that only exists between two people who have spent enough time together that the absence of words doesn't feel like distance. Then Evelyn looked down at her wrist. At the two bracelets sitting side by side, her mother's worn gold and the new rose gold with its small diamonds catching even the dim light of the room. She touched them both with the fingers of her other hand. Ran her thumb across the older one first, then the new one. She would have loved this, she said quietly. My mother. She would have cried for 20 minutes, and then asked me approximately 47 questions about you. What kind of questions? Evelyn smiled. The kind mothers ask. Where are you from? What do your parents do? Do you go to church? She paused. Whether your intentions are serious. The word landed in the space between them and stayed there. Seojin was quiet for a moment. Then he moved, not dramatically, not with any of the performance the moment might have invited. He simply turned to face her fully and waited until she turned to face him. My intentions, he said, have been serious since the second month. Evelyn looked at him. We've been together 8 months. I know. The city hummed 47 floors below them. Somewhere out there Diana Voss was sitting in her perfect kitchen, trying to understand how she'd misread the room so completely. Somewhere out there a women's shelter was receiving more jewelry than it had ever held. Somewhere out there Claire was drafting a resignation letter, and a store manager was writing an apology he didn't have the words for. And up here, removed from all of it, above all of it, Evelyn Monroe was standing at a window in a cream-wrapped dress with 2 bracelets on her wrist, looking at a man who had walked into a room and bought everything in it without raising his voice once, and understanding for the first time with her whole chest what that had actually meant. Not the money, not the power, not the reversal of Diana's humiliation, satisfying as that had been. What it meant was simpler than all of that. It meant he had come. The moment she sent 3 words, he had already been moving. No questions. No what happened, or are you sure, or can't this wait? Just movement. Just presence. Just him walking through that door and crossing that floor and walking past Diana Voss like she was furniture, because the only thing in that room that mattered to him was already standing at the center display case with her chin up and her jaw tight and her mother's bracelet, catching the light. He had come. That was the whole thing. That was all of it. Seojin. Her voice was soft. The secret. She looked at him steadily. Us being a secret. She paused. I don't think I want that anymore. Something moved through his eyes. Quick and deep, like light through dark water. Good, he said. Because after today, it was never going to be a secret again anyway. She laughed again, that same sudden unguarded sound, and he stepped forward and pulled her into him, and she let him, her forehead dropping to his chest, his arms closing around her completely. They stood like that at the window with the whole city spread out below them, lit up and restless and completely unaware of the two of them standing above it. His chin came down to rest on top of her head. Outside Las Vegas burned bright against the dark. Inside everything was finally, completely still. And that right there is what it looks like when a woman holds herself together long enough for the right person to show up and burn the whole room down on her behalf. Quietly. Completely. Without a single wasted word. Evelyn didn't need rescuing. She needed witnessing. And Kim Seojin, cold-faced, building-owning, block-considering Kim Seojin, saw her. Fully. From the very beginning. If this story moved you the way it moved me writing it, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop in the comments, what was your favorite moment in this entire story? Was it the walk past Diana? The 4 words? Or that last moment at the window? Thank you for watching Afro's Seoul Mafia Diaries, where every story is layered, every woman is powerful, and every man who deserves her shows up without being asked twice. We will see you in the next one.